No error messages, please. All right, we are live, and we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So, welcome. I hope that you guys will find us on this. We had some technical difficulties, but we got reconnected. So, thank you all for joining us today. I would like to welcome everybody to L2B Aviation's Global Aviation News live stream with Maria Fernanda Redondo from Nassau Abogados, our L2B member in Costa Rica. Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much. We're happy you joined us today.
Thank you, Tracy, for the time.
Today, we're going to examine the approval and entry into force of the new regulations to the General Customs Act in Costa Rica. The act includes crucial amendments applicable to aviation, such as the carriage of cargo, import of company material, and AOG events. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Maria. She's experienced in customs, aeronautical, and maritime law, and expertise in aircraft and ship, temporary importation, registration, and regulatory compliance. She provides legal advice to airlines, shipping companies, and businesses in customs special regimes like free trade zones. Welcome, Maria. Thank you for joining us. Now, I thought Costa Rica was all about zip lines and tourism and tree houses, but apparently we have cargo as well. Tell us more about that.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, yeah, definitely we are more than tourism, which is a big part of our industry and business in Costa Rica. But first, let me introduce you the importance of international trade in Costa Rica, especially air cargo. According to data provided by the Civil Aviation Authority of Costa Rica, during 2022, the San Jose Airport received an approximately of 20,742 cargo operations, representing an approximately of 101,000 metric tons of cargo. And currently, there are more than 29 airlines operating in Costa Rica through regular flights, non regular flights, or charter operations, being that air cargo operations are significantly important for our country, especially the development in our country of the medical, technological, and manufacture industry, as well as perishable cargo operations. It causes that the air cargo operations are important for our country and it continue growing. Given the relevance of air cargo, the reforms of the general customs legal framework are particularly important for our country. And today I would like you to share you some thoughts about these changes and how these changes may be an opportunity or challenge for the aviation industry in our country. You know that customs regulations have a direct impact in the aviation industry, starting from the Chicago Convention, which states that the aircraft on a flight to, from, or across a contracting state shall be admitted free of duty. Other supplies such as fuels, lubricant oils, spare parts, and onboard supplies shall be also accepted free of duty unless they are unloaded of the aircraft and they will be custom controlled by the authority. For that reason, it is very important that airlines know about the customs regulation. Another example where we see customs regulation in the aviation industry is regarding the air transport agreements known as ATAs, which usually includes provisions related to how to treat company material. Usually, those air transport agreements includes tax exemption or customs exemption for the introduction or import of company material. So today, I will summarize that the customs regulation in Costa Rica rules, among others, aspects such as the treatment of company material, spare parts, import or state of aircraft, cargo transported by air, and in a smaller percentage regarding passengers, their luggage, their merchandise other than luggage, and the obligation the passenger has to declare cash equal to or in excess of $10,000. In this talk in this conversation, I will focus especially on air cargo and not related to passengers' obligations because the new customs regulation impact those areas. You know that once I heard that air cargo was the ugly duckling in the aviation industry because heavy lift cargo, dirty, and wet packages were not as attractive or classy as business or first class for passengers. However, during COVID, it was visible how cargo represented a valuable and important business for airlines, especially when the transportation of passengers during COVID was almost zero. Certainly, air cargo represent a special service in which logistic parties participate, such as freight forwarders, cargo agents, customs brokers, airlines stations at origin or destination, warehouses, among others. So, what should we know or what airlines need to know about the new regulations? I would like you to to give you a context of where we are now, as well as the main opportunities and challenges for the cargo aviation in our country. As you know, or you may know, Costa Rica belongs to the Central American Customs Union, and regional regulation it's applicable for Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. On May 1st, 2021, the new Central American Customs Code and its regulation enter into force in our country. This regulation is usually known as CAUCA and RECAUCA, and some important changes related to terms, procedures were incorporated in our customs system. Then, on June 29, 2022, the reform of the General Customs Act entered into force, and changes were made to the domestic law to adapt from the regional regulation. The General Customs Directorate promote a reform seeking to establish a simpler and safer customs system that's worked jointly with the customs control that is necessary. One of the biggest achievements and changes in which carriers' activity it's directly impact is that now the customs regulation changed the treatment on overage or shortage of cargo as well as partial shipments. This is very important because it includes penalties and fines. Even if the law entered into force last year, the regulation of such law entered into force this last June 15, 2023. This one was the most expected regulation because it contains specific rules regarding procedures, requirements, and obligations of the parties involved in the logistic change. As said, the new regulation entered into force this last June 15, so it's new for authorities, for carriers, and all the parties involved, as I said. So this new regulation, it's a very complex and vast text. However, I would like to summarize and talk to you about the three changes which I consider are the most relevant to the aviation industry. As said, the shortage and average of cargo, the partial shipments, and finally, but not least, the import of spare parts and company material. So the first one is related to air cargo. It is common that airlines receive more or less packages than indicated in the airway bill, and justification must be filed to the authorities. In the past, the term to file this justification was of 1 month up after the arrival of the flight and the cargo, but now it changed to 15 business days. So the term is shorter. It is important to know that. Now, apostille documents are not necessary to file the justification, which is very good because it is simpler and easy to obtain the documentation. And one of the biggest changes is that now the authority has 3 business days to issue the ruling. In the past, a justification of an overage of cargo could take between 2 weeks to 3 months. And during that time, cargo was detained by customs. So people choose air transportation because of the speed and the time of delivery. And with this past regulation, it was not possible to deliver cargo faster. And also because sometimes it was very difficult for airlines to file that justification because they were not the one who were doing the packaging of the cargo. A great advance, it's about who has the obligation to file that justification. As I said, in the past regulation for cargo, air cargo, the only one authorized to file the justification was the airline. So even though the mistake, the cause of the overage was not because of the airline, it was the only one who was authorized to do that. So it was like filing a justification blind because it was another party who caused the overage or the shortage. So since the new regulations allow other than airlines, such as exporters, consolidators, consignees, to file that justification, it is extremely important because the new regulation established a fine equivalent to the amount of the goods because of that uncompliance, and with the possibility to double the fine in case of recidivism. So right now, the other parties can file the justification in case of an overage or a shortage of cargo, um, as well as the time by the authority to issue the ruling. It is very important because right now they have 3 business days to issue the ruling. Of course, that's more accurate according to the aviation needs. Another change that I would like to point out is regarding the concept of partial shipments. As the overage and shortage of cargo, the partial shipments are useful in the cargo operations. They are part of the air operations, and it is globally known that air shipping is the fastest mean of transportation with respect sea and land transportation. So people paid for the speed, people paid for the delivery of the goods. With the past regulation, partial shipments were considered as a type of overage or shortage of cargo, meaning that it could take an approximately of 1 week to release a cargo due to partial shipments. Right now, the new regulations define the concept of partial shipment. It defines as the packages associated with the same master airway bill that due to air operation must be transported in 2 or more flights arriving in the territory in fractions. So the biggest advantage is that right now the authority and the custom regulation recognize that the partial shipments are part of the normal air operation and it was not an exemption. The parties involved, this is very important because the parties involved in all the logistic change must know about the customs regulation in the place of destination, for example, Costa Rica. Why? Because it is important to know the regulation to minimize fines, penalties, detentions, or delays at customs borders. And by parties, I don't mean only the airlines. There are others involved who has a crucial participation in all the logistic change. For example, freight forwarders and cargo agents who are the ones who cut the airway bill or issue the airway bill. With the information that it's included in the airway bill, the airline subsequently will transmit the information to the informatic custom system in Costa Rica. So for that reason, it is very important that all the parties involved know about how to treat overage of cargo or partial shipments as well. And finally, in my opinion, the biggest achievement for the aviation industry in Costa Rica is the establishment of a new temporary category, a new category for a temporary import regime for parts and spare parts for international transportation aircrafts without the need to render a guarantee. So the past regulation was outdated on this regard. It obligating airlines to conduct temporary imports for each shipment, rendering a guarantee equivalent to the amount of duties. So, for example, in case of a temporary import of an engine, the guarantee will be of a very high amount of thousands and thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, either for preventive maintenance or aircraft on ground events, AOGs, the process to render a guarantee was so time consuming for the airlines. I don't know why, but usually an AOG occurs on Fridays or holidays where banks are closed. So it usually could take more than a week to complete the custom clearance of such spare part. Practically, it was so complicated that at the end, the airlines decide to pay customs duties for the spare parts, even if they shouldn't, because they need to have the aircraft airworthiness again. So, unfortunately, lots of airlines have paid thousands of dollars on customs duties because the regulation was not according to the needs of the industry in terms of flexibility and time of resolution. And after a big fight, I could say that the new regulation allowed to import spare parts of the aircraft under a temporary regime without rendering a guarantee in which the merchandise can remain in the country for up to 1 year. Right now, it's taking between 1 day to 3 days to obtain the authorization. So, in case the merchandise is used, an affidavit will be required to conclude the import. And in case the merchandise is not used, well, the airlines must do a re export of such merchandise within the term given. The import of spare parts and attending AOG events in Costa Rica has been a headache to airlines in the past because of the reasons I said. In general, our regulation was complex and outdated, causing delays and uncertainty how to treat the import of high value goods, such as jeans, and preferring most of the time to pay taxes, even when they are supposed to be tax exempt. Another recommendation for airlines is to review whether their state has signed an air service agreement or air transportation agreement with Costa Rica, because usually it has provisions related to the exemption of customs duties for spare parts and company material. So, company material such as blankets, um, company materials such as the tags, the tickets, paper, and at the end, it is money for the airline. So, as I said, for me, that's the biggest achievement uh, that we would be able to see the changes in the customs regulation. But in general, I must say that it is very important and fundamental that the aviation industry is involved to guarantee that the new norms responds to the principles of smart regulation. The participation of the industry is crucial to inform authorities and parties involved about the nature and the needs of the business. If not, the likely result is a regulation that does not consider the particularities of the aviation industry, and therefore it could represent a major challenge for the industry. So, knowing about the new requirements, regulations, and fines applicable is the best way to establish a preventive culture within the organization and with the relation of the to the relevant stakeholders of, as I said, cargo airlines, freight forwarders, cargo agents as well. It is very important that airlines must know about the changes in the new regulation to demand other parties to comply with them.
Yes.
And finally, AOG events caused the loss of thousands of dollars to the airlines. Therefore, the quicker the aircraft can be flying again, the fewer the losses. In this sense, having a good advice on how to manage the import of such parts can represent time and cost saving for the airlines. Additionally, knowing whether international treaties in place establish exemption for common material may represent also an important saving per year for the airline. Finally, well, I try to put in a nutshell a very complex regulation regarding the new customs procedures, fines, obligations for carriers and logistic parties. There is a lot to cover in the new regulation, and I want only to give you an overview of such changes. But if you have any questions on want more information about these new regulations, feel free to email at my email address, which is in the screen, and we will be very glad to help you. Thank you very much for to L2B for allowing me, to participate in this live stream, and I'll be very glad to participate in others. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Now, this was really interesting to me, Maria. We had talked on the kind of our early calls about some statistics, and I'm not sure you mentioned these. If you did, I missed it. But that there are 20,742 cargo operations in Costa Rica, representing 101,000 metric tons of cargo. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct. And this is only for San Jose Airport.
Oh,
The second one, the second airport we have in Costa Rica is the Liberia Airport, located in the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. That airport has also cargo operations in a less percentage because the airport right now is not adapted fully for cargo operations. However, airlines usually use their bellies on passengers' flights to transport cargo. Right now, the Guanacaste Airport doesn't have fully cargo carriers, but they also have cargo. So this data does not include Guanacaste. It could be more.
that's, I mean, that seems like a lot to me I mean, that's a thriving cargo business for Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
thank
And
you.
also,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, what I was gonna say is that it continue growing. So as I said during COVID, the cargo operations increase in Costa Rica. We have had events, for example, that the border at Nicaragua is closed. So some cargo, when that occurs because of political issues, they move cargo from Central America to Costa Rica by air as well.
Oh, that's interesting. We should have had a little map so people could kind of see how Costa Rica was situated in the middle of all that. So, thank you so much for your time today. It has been wonderful. Again, Maria is with Nassar Abogados, who is our L2B aviation member in Costa Rica. They also have offices in a couple of other countries: El Salvador, Nicaragua. I wish I could list them all. I'm sorry. Anyway, if you are interested in
All
learning
Central
more,
America.
Central America. You may visit their website at nassaravogados.com. They are a member of L2B Aviation, which is a network of attorneys around the globe, created of attorneys who specialize in aviation. So if you are in need of an attorney in a foreign jurisdiction, you can visit our website, l2baviation.com, and see if you can find somebody that you need in the jurisdiction you're looking for. So thank you very much for joining us, Maria. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, you too. Thank you. Have a good day to all.